Boker Tov. Today's daf is Daf Yud Gimel in Makos, as we learn from Chanukah Beis Yisrael and soon about Tzar V'Shivya. We're at the Mishnah at the bottom of Yud Beis and Mid Beis. Kiyotzibo. These words Kiyotzibo are not necessarily germane over here because it's a repetition of a Mishnah in Shvius, and there it had made more sense. But anyway, some don't have the gear, so the words Kiyotzibo may or not be necessary. But here's the halacha: Rotzeach shegolo li'ir miklato. Let's say he rotzeach, we said before, he went after he was adjudicated, and it turned out that he had to go to the Ir Miklat, and he went there. And they want to honor him. They said, he was a rabbi, or he had some good position before, and they want to honor him. Yomam, he should tell them, Rotzechani, listen, I'm a murderer. Don't give me the honors. Don't bestow on me the honors. Amalo, afal pikain, even though you were a murderer, but we understand it was inadvertent, and we want to honor you. He could accept it. In other words, he has to first protest and say, look, you understand I'm a murderer here. I'm just not a regular resident. And that's the idea of Zed Varotzech. We used those words before, that the Rotzech himself could defend himself against the Goel Adam. If the Goel Adam comes to kill him, he should try to protect himself too and defend himself, not just the rabbis who accompany him. But here it's used for Zed Varotzech. He should protest and try to avoid any honor. Now, when the inadvertent murderer goes to the city, goes to one of the refuge cities, does he have to pay rent to live there? According to Tosfos, the issue is, does he have to even pay mas taxes and arnona, which is like a head tax, not like the arnona that we have today in Israel. Is really a property tax. But anyway, these are both taxes. You have to pay taxes, you have to pay rent. So Rabbi Yehuda says, yeah, he has to pay. I mean, he's forced to go there, and it's a city of refuge, and it protects him from the Goel Adam. But the Levium who own the city and they have the property there, what are they supposed to do? Give him free rent? Rav Meir says, yeah, they have to give him free rent. Meir Maloya Malum Schar. That's the deal. That it's he's supposed to take care of him. They're supposed to go to this place, treat him like we do a prisoner today. You put him in prison, you feed him, you clothe him, you wash him. You don't charge him rent, they give him comes out of there with a PhD, right? He gives everything, right? They come out, they learn Hebrew, everything. Give him everything for free. That's what Meir says, and then when he goes back, after the Kohen Gadol dies and he goes back to his city, he goes back, then he gets his original position back. He goes back to, so Meir is much more lenient and much more, he's nicer to the murderer. He says, number one, he doesn't have to pay any rent, doesn't have to pay any taxes. And when he goes back, he gets back his regular job. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, but he doesn't get back his old job. So Rabbi Yehuda is more machmer against the murderer, and Rabbi Yehuda is more mekel. Amrav Kana, machlokas b'sheish, machlokas over here, whether he has to pay taxes or pay rent, is only in the 6 cities. The Marsav Lachem, the Pasuk says it should be Lachem for a refuge. L'klita. One says it's only refuge is there, but we're not giving you everything for free. Rabbi Yehuda says you got to pay. Meir says no. Lechem means it's for all your needs are taken care of there. That's only in the 6 cities. The other 42 cities, Levium, which we said also protect if you go in there for protection. We said the difference is that the 6 main cities of refuge protect you whether you went in there intentionally or not. The 42 is only if you went in there with the intention of getting protection. But the other 42, everybody agrees that you have to pay rent, let's say, and taxes in those cities. That's what Rav Kana says. Amalei Rava, no. Lachem means everything. Everybody agrees that lachem would mean everything in the 6, meaning you don't have to pay any rent or taxes. Elam Rava machlokas is in the other 42 cities. The Marsav Valeim Titnu, and on top of the other 6, give these 42 also kihanach leklita, just like these. In addition to the 6 cities that afford refuge, give 42 more cities for refuge. Marsav Valeim Titnu kihanach, exactly like the first 6. Just like those that's chol. So according to Rava says everybody agrees that the main 6 cities you don't have to pay taxes or pay rent. The machlokes is by the other 42. Is the other 42 just added on that you can get refuge there too? Or is it just like you have all your needs are taken care of in the first 6, you're entitled to that also in the other 42? but everybody agrees that in the main 6, you don't have to pay rent or pay taxes according to Tosfos. But he goes back, once he goes back to his city, assuming he went back alive, that means that the Kohen Gadol died before he died. Remember, if he died, we learned first, if he died before the Kohen Gadol died, he died in the city of refuge, he's buried there until such time that the Kohen Gadol dies, and then he's taken out and reinterred at his family plot. We find a similar idea that you go back where? By an Eved Ivri, who sold himself because he was poor. And when he goes back in Yovel, he goes back to his home. So it says there, V'shaval mishpachto be'alachuza into the let's say the land of his father. Yashuv, right? It says V'shaval mishpachto be'alachuza sav yashuv. He returned to the, let's say, the plantation, the land of his father, of his fathers. He returns there. L'mishpachto ushav. He furnished his family. But any job or any position that they had, a governor or a rabbi, a Rosh Yeshiva, whatever he was, he doesn't get that job back necessarily. That's the idea, that when an Eved goes back, when he's freed in Yovel, goes back to his family, but he doesn't necessarily get back his old job. Divrei Rav Yehuda, again, the Rav Yehuda is more machmir when it comes to the Eved Ivri. Rav Meir says, no, afushav l'mash chazika vosov. He goes back to what his fathers had, what his ancestors had. Everything like his fathers. Just if his fathers had certain jobs, certain positions that they had, they were entitled to that. He gets it too. V'chein begola. So till now we're speaking about an Eved Ivri. This is what the Bryce is talking about, Eved Ivri. And then the same thing when it comes to golas, meaning when a inadvertent murderer who murdered, he also goes back. We have the same machlokas here too. Kshu yomer yashuv. When he says here by the inadvertent murderer who goes back after the Kohen Gadol also says Yashiv, the Rabbi says Rotzeach. My B'chein Begola. What does it mean B'chein Begola? Kedatanya Yashiv Rotzeach. The Bryce says it wasn't clear. It says B'chein Begola. Shiur Yashiv, the Rabbi says Rotzeach. What do you mean B'chein Begola? In what sense? Kedatanya Yashiv Rotzeach as Achuzoso. The Rotzeach returns to the land of his inheritance. He goes back to his land, he goes back to his family, but he doesn't necessarily get the job back. Divrei Rav Yehuda doesn't get back the old job. Again, Rav Yehuda is more machmer in both cases. Rav Meir Omer, afu shav l'mash chaziko avos. He even goes back to the job, to the position that his father had. Why Gomer Shiva or Sheva mehasam? In both cases, it says Yashuv. By the Aviknani, it says Yashuv l'mishpachto, and here it also says Yashuv harotzech el eretz achuzasou. So you learn that the Gzeir Shava. This would be according to Rav Meir. Rav Yehuda doesn't hold the Gzeir Shava. Rav Yehuda doesn't hold of it. He says not necessarily the same thing. Why? Because in a Chanami, that's what the Mishnah had said, that Rav Yehuda holds he doesn't necessarily get back his old job, and Rav Meir says he does. So here too, the Tosfos points out here that Shiva near the Hainu Dafka le Rav Meir, Yitzchak Gzeir Shava al Rav Yehuda, or he could krab behedya gabe rotzeach. He got a special pasuk there. It tells you he goes back, and that's what he only goes back to his family, not to the job. Then Cain Harik Begola is part of Rav Meir. The Rav Meir says that just like he gets back his old job before, when it comes to the Eved Ivri who's freed at Yovel, he goes back to his old job. The same thing, a Rotzeach also goes back to his old job. That's the idea. The Gzeir Shava is going according to Rav Meir, and those are also fits in with his words. As Rav Meir's words, not the whole brisa. And that ends the second parak. Be'eloin halokin. So we had people who go into Golus, right? We talked about Golus still now mostly, right? Talking about going into Golus and Makos, right? Talk about Makos. They talk about the people go into Golus when they kill inadvertently, and the following people get Malchus. Now, this is not an all-encompassing list. People get Malchus. As we know, almost any lav, a losase, that involves a maisa, you get Malchus. The Mishnah says specifically these because there's chedushim in most of them. In other words, to tell you that even if a person does something, let's say, most of these cases are cases where you're chayiv kares. So you're chayiv kares min hashemayim, so God's going to punish you for that. You'll also get Malchus. No, if there's a lav, you get Malchus for that too. That's a chiddush here. And we'll see who this Mishnah is going according to. So these people get Malchus, even though they might get some other punishment like kares. Habal achos, if a person sleeps with his sister, alchos aviv, his aunt, his father's sister, alchos imo, his mother's sister, alchos ishto, or his wife's sister, right? Punishment for that is karas. But in other words, even after he divorces his wife, it says aleh b'chayeh, even after he divorces his wife, he cannot marry her sister unless his first wife dies. Ba'aleish's achiv, if he sleeps with his brother's wife, of course, shalom makam mitzvah, if it's not a case of yibum, chayiv kares there. So even though he's chayiv kares, but if he was warned, he said, listen, don't do this, and there's Adam, he's going to get malchus. Aishas achiyaviv, or his uncle's wife, alanida, man sleeps with Anida, even if it's his own wife, get kares for that. Almana l'kohen gadol, grushel chutz l'kohen hedyo. So what's this is not a case of kares. This is a regular law. Almana l'kohen gadol, grushel chutz l'kohen hedyo. Why does it tell me this? It could be Rashi discuss this. Maybe there's some chiddush here. The chiddush could be even if she's an almana and a grusha, as we're going to mention. She's an almana and a grusha. How could she be an almana and a grusha? Two different marriages, right? She died her first husband died, and the second husband divorced her. So she's two things. So now, if a kohen gadol lives with a almana who's also a grusha, he's going to get twice malchus, as we'll see. So almana kohen gadol, a grusha chutz l'kohen hedyon. Now, again, Rashi mentions over here the chalutza is learned out of because it says ve'isha. I don't think he means that it's a doraisa. Tosfos takes issue with him. What do you mean? A chalutza is only a drabanan. That a kohen can't marry a grusha, but a chalutza who received chalitza from her prior husband or from her prior yavam, not technically not the husband, that's only a drabanan because it's doma to grusha. In any case, these are mentioned. You get malchus in these cases if you're forewarned not to do them. We'll see. Mamzer Nasina Yisrael, Bas Yisrael, and Sila Mamzer. The Chiddush here is not so much Mamzer, but Nasina also is based on Los's Chatenbaum. You get Malchus or two. Almana Grusha, Chanem Shim Shnei Shemus. Again, as I mentioned before, if a Kohen Gadol marries an Almana who's also Grusha, he's going to get Malchus twice. Grusha of Chalutza and Chayav El Mishum Achas Bilvad. Why? Because Chalutza is not a Doraisa. Chalutza is not a Doraisa. It's only Grusha is Doraisa. Tosfos says could be Chalutza gets Marcus Drabanan, because it is a Drabanan for a kohen to marry a chalutza. So if she's a grusha and a chalutza, since we're giving him malchus for the grusha, we wouldn't give him malchus madras Drabanan for the chalutza. Okay, so all these are cases where you get malchus. Most of them are chiddush that they're chorus. Other ones are mentioned that tell you that if she's a grusha or chalutza, you only give her malchus once. If she's an amana and a grusha to a kohen gadol, get malchus twice. Two Yisur of the Torah. Tomei Shechus HaKodesh. Here's another case of kares. If a person's tama and he ate kachim, chayiv kares for that. Still, if he was warned not to, gets malchus. V'abala mikdash came into a base mikdash in a state of tama. Habal mirch tame, or he's chayiv gets malchus for that even though he's chayiv kares. Same thing with ochel chelab, chayiv kares, dam, noser, pigel, tame. Shochid umala b'chutz. If you shechted a carbon outside the base of mikdash, or you offered it on an altar outside the base of mikdash. Chametz b'Pesach. Just if you ate chametz on Pesach, chayav kares. But if there was Adam and Asra, you were warned, get malchus for that. If you eat or did malacha on Yom Kippur, also chayav kares that. On Yom Kippur, you're not chayav misas bezin like Shabbos. If you're warned, it's only Yisur kares, but you would get malchus. Hamafatam es Hashemim. If you blend and process, you compound the shemen amishcha, which the Torah specified that only was done in the base of Mikdash, and you do that, Chayiv Kares and Fatim Esak Torahs, or if you do the incense, right? If you blend the incense, same thing. If you use Moshe's shemen and you anoint yourself with that, also all these are Chayiv Kares. Now those are Chayiv Kares, and the Chiddush is you still get malchus. Let's say you eat any of these disgusting things, you're also Chayiv malchus. There's no Kares over there. Chiddush is that you get malchus, as we'll see. Achol tevel, you're not really chayiv kares, you're chayiv misibei shemayim. Still, u'ma'aser rishon showing the prasa, which is also like tevel. If you took ma'aser rishon, you gave it to Levi. Levi has to give 10% of that to the coin. If he didn't, it's really tevel. U'ma'aser sheni. So those are cases where you're chayiv misas bezin. You still get malchus if you were warned. Ma'aser sheni, if you ate ma'aser sheni outside of your shleim, or hegdish shelo niftu, ate hegdish, it wasn't redeemed, it's still hegdish. And that you could eat anywhere. If you ate it anywhere, you're not supposed to. If you're not a kohen, right? If you ate it outside the base of Mikdash, whatever, you're chayiv. So then it just goes on. How much of tevel do you have to eat to be chayiv? right? How much do we chayv? Now we said tevel's really misvei shemayim, but the chiddush of here also is all these things you get malchus for if you were warned. How much? Shimon Omer calls you any amount. You have to kazayis, which is the standard shiur of halacha mashmi Sinai on most foods. Most things the shiur is kazayis. There are exceptions, but most things are kazayis. But Rav Shimon says even any amount. Amar Rav Shimon, yatamoli be'ochel nemola shu kolshu shu chayiv. If you eat a ant, small little insect, even though it's very tiny, aren't you more chayiv amalo? They should be also because that was the way it was created. It's a whole entity. It's an intact entity in the form of its creation. That's different. Amar lahen still also afki tachas could be also. Well, the same thing. Tevel. If you eat one kernel of wheat, whatever you call that, one grain, one kernel of wheat, that's also the way it's created. So therefore, it's a machlokas whether if you're chayiv on a kolshu or you have to have a kazayas. Now, the idea of the Mishnah, though, is that you're chayiv malchus, even though you're going to get karas. But it says over here, it says the Gemara, 2 lines from the bottom of the page, chayiv increases katani, chayiv misas bezin lo katani. It only mentions ones, where do you say get malchus? If it's something that you're chayiv karas for. Obviously, if you did it b'mezid. Excuse me, and if you were warned and there were Adam, you would get malchus for it. But he doesn't mention chayiv misas bezin. Let's say Shabbos. Let's say you were warned about Shabbos. Chayiv misas bezin for that, right? You get karas if you did it b'mezid without Adam and Asra, but if you ate Adam and Asra on Shabbos, you're chayiv skila, right? So it doesn't mention being machal Shabbos or many others that you're chayiv misas bezin for, or avodah zarah or whatever. A chayiv increases katani, chayiv misas bezin lo katani. Why not? Mishnah goes like Rabbi Kiva. We're going to have a 3 machlokas. Do you get malchus when you're chayiv kares, when you're chayiv misas bezin, or don't you get? Do you get? What did I say? Kares? Do you get malchus rather? Do you get malchus when you're also chayiv kares? Do you get malchus when you're also chayiv misas bezin, or not? So we're going to have a 3 machlokas. Our Mishnah goes like Rabbi Kiva. The Tanya, echad chayiv kares, echad misas bezin. Whether you're chayiv, whether it's chayiv misas a kares, like many of the ones we mentioned in our Mishnah, or whether you're chayiv misas bezin, like avodah zarah, shvichas damim, Shabbos, things like that, right? Gili arroyos, you'll be killed for that if you're a mezana with eish. All those things are chayiv misas bezin, and there's also chayiv kares. Let's say you were warned about them not to do them. Could you get malchus for them? Yeshnu b'chal malchus aboam de Rabbi Shmuel. Rava says you get malchus on everything. If you were warned not to do this, you get malchus for it. And you could tell them you're going to get malchus if you do this. You also might be killed by bezin. You might be killed by God, kares. So Rabbi Shmuel says in all cases you get it. We'll see all the reasons for this. Rabbi Kiva says no. Chayiv krisis yeshnu b'chal malchus. For chayiv krisis you're going to get malchus. Malchus arbon. She'im why? Why do you get malchus arbon? Aren't you also going to get killed by God? But you may not be killed by God. She'im tshuva bezin. She'im tshuva bezin shalmala mochlo. The reason is because this might be your only punishment. Because if you did something you're chayiv kares for and you did tshuva, maybe Hashem won't punish you. Maybe Hashem will mochel you. So the only punishment you would get is malchus. So you get malchus. Chayiv misas bezdin, where you could do tshuva all day, bezdin's still going to kill you. Chayiv misas bezdin ain't a mechlal malchus. You're not going to malchus. Pardon?
You don't have all day.
No, but I'm trying to get. No. I'm saying before let's say before the Gemara din, you say you did tshuva. You come to court and you say I did tshuva. Not going to help you. Chayv misas bezin ain't a b'chal malchus arbon. So it says chayv misas you're going to get killed anyway by the court if there was Adam and Asra. Shemas tshuva ain't bezin shamata mochel. It can't be mochelim. Therefore, so Rabbi Kiva makes the difference. Rabbi Shmuel says you're always going to get malchus. I don't care if it's misas bezin, misas kares. If you were warned, you're going to get malchus. Of course, you're warned that you're going to get malchus. Kiva says no, that's only on chayv krisis because maybe you're not going to get kares. Maybe you'll do tshuva. Whereas for misas bezdin, you can't say he did tshuva. Oh, he committed adultery. Oh, he did avodah zarah. Oh, he did he did machal Shabbos. I did tshuva. Not going to help you. Bezdin's going to kill you anyway. So therefore, since you're going to get misas bezdin, you're not going to get malchus. You only get one punishment, not 2. That's basically Rabbi Kiva's idea. You get 1 punishment, not 2. Rabbi Shmuel doesn't agree. We'll see why Rabbi Shmuel doesn't agree with it. We'll see. Rabbi Yitzchak, a third sheet that says no, never. Rabbi Yitzchak Omer chayiv increases b'chalala. You're not going to get malchus at all. Why? Because there's a pasuk that says do all these disgusting things of all the different kinds of gilui arayos of improper sexual conduct. and he did all, it says, Kichol, you're going to get chorus. So it says, so Rabbi Yitzchak says, listen, he was in general category. All these things you have chorus. So why specifically when it says if you sleep with your sister, it says chorus there? It's included with all the other forbidden relationships. Laduna b'chorus v'malchus, to tell you only get chorus, not malchus. That's what it's telling you. You only get chorus and not malchus. They tell you that when you get chorus, you only get chorus, not malchus. So we have three different opinions. Rabbi Shmuel says you're going to get malchus, whether it's chayv krisis or chayv misas besen. Kiva says only chayv krisis, and Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Yitzchak says no. When you're chayv any of that, you don't get malchus. My time, Rabbi Shmuel. What's Rabbi Shmuel's reason why you get everything? No matter what, you get malchus. It says imlo tishma lassos is called the Torah. If you don't do if you don't observe all these things, lo tishmor, right? If you don't observe, meaning that this is a lo saseh. If you don't do any of these things, what's going to happen? You're going to get malchus. It says afterwards, v'hiflo Hashem es makoscha. Hashem's going to make your punishment, your beatings, wondrous. Going to be what does it mean wondrous? What do you mean beatings? Haflazu any day I don't know what that haflaz. When the pasuk says v'pilu hashofet, the shofet will cause him to knock him down, make him lie down. Be called the fun of and beat him. Havayomar flazu malchus. So it's telling you basically, if you're over on any lo saseh in the Torah, you're going to get malchus. L'ksivim lo sishmor lassus is called the Torah. So if you don't do any of these things, you're going to be hifla. You're going to get malchus. So yachi chayv esena. Why don't you say it says if you don't observe any of the laws in the Torah, you go against any laws, you're going to get malchus. Maybe chayv esena also. It says lo sishmor ksiv. If you don't observe. Whenever the pasuk says, doesn't have to say lo, like lo tignov, lo tirtzach. Whenever it says hishomer, the word hishomer, or it says pen or al, those are all lashon of eno elo lo sases. Those are lo sases. And here it says im lo tishmor. So if you go against any lo saseh, you're going to get malchus. That's what Rabbi Shmuel says. Any lo saseh, you're going to get malchus for. We don't care if there's also a punishment of death. Okay, so why do you say lavshem b'maisa? You don't get malchus. Lavshem b'maisa also. It says lasos. And lo sishmor lasos. You got to do something. Has to be an action sit. What about lavshem nitik liaseh, where you did a maisa of a lo saseh, but it's corrected by an aseh? We say you don't get malchus over there. The answer is dumi de lav de chasima. It says when it talks about lo sashmor lasos, nearby there it says the lav lo sachsum shor bedisho, and that's not a lav nitik liaseh. So therefore, it's got to be something like that lav. A lav shenitik, let's say, would not be included. Once you come onto this reason, you say lav, it's got to be something like lav chasima. You don't have to give an answer and say, well, it's got to be lasos. It's got to be, just say it's got to be like the lav of chasima, and that's why you don't get malchus on an asay or a lav anitikli asay or a los asay she'ein bo masa. Right? Lav chasima is a lav that has a masa and it's not nitikli asay. Okay, so Rabbi Shmuel says any los asay that has a masa involved that's not a nitikli asay, you get malchus on, because it says based on these psukim. For Rabbi Kiva, my time. What's Rabbi Kiva's reason why he says you do get malchus if you're over on a mitzvah that has chorus, but not on bezdin, not if it's mis bezdin? It says kidei b'shaso. Says you should punish him according to his risha. Risha one. You can punish him for one sin, so to speak, or with one punishment. In this case, but not for two. So you can't give him both misas bezdin. You can't kill him, and also give him malchus. Rabbi Shmuel, what did Rabbi Shmuel say about that? Hanimili misa o mama. That's if it's two different kinds of punishment, like killing him and making him pay a fine. You don't do that, one or the other. Or malchus a moment, or malchus and money. Misa malchus, misa richti. But if you give him malchus and death, that's just like one long process. It's one long execution. Yeah, you can give him two malchus if it's two different averos. Two different averos for the one.
Maximum, you got to give him 1 day.
Yeah, you can only take so much. Remember, there's a maximum. You can't even give him 39. You have to give him a multiple of 3 as much as he could take. You can give him 21. You give him 18 as many as he could take. If he could take both in 1 day, yeah, for 2 different sins, yeah. If he's capable of taking it, he could take it. If he can't, he can't. Give him it to him another day. Avo misa malchus misa rechtes. That's Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi says you're right. Cave yourself, but when it comes to misa and Malkos, Misa and Misa and Malkos is one long thing. So you're right, you can't give him two different punishments, but this is like one long punishment. So you can give him Malkos and Misa. Of course, if it's Malkos and Korah, certainly it's not you're not giving him the chorus. Hashem is giving him the chorus. That's not a problem. Or Rabbi Akiva, so Rabbi Akiva says what? You can't give him two punishments. So here also, Hashem is giving him the other punishment. Why could you give him two? Rabbi Akiva says, why don't you kill him if it's let's say it was Machal Shabbos. Can you give him Malchus for that? No, because you're going to kill him. All right, you can only give him one punishment, not two. But according to Akiva, also he's going to get two punishments, Malchus and Hashem's going to give him chorus. Rabbi Akiva, Nami. What do you want to say? Like we said before, Shimasu Tshuva. Well, maybe he won't get the chorus because maybe he'll do tshuva and Hashem will be mochalim. Hashtami is lovely, but right now when you're giving him the malchus, he hasn't done tshuva yet. He hasn't protested tshuva. So therefore, why don't you say Kidei Rishaso, one punishment, not two? Rav Avu says, well, Rav Akiva will learn the fellowship Satorah Chayv Kris the malchus. We got a special pasuk which tells us that in your Chayv Kores, you also get malchus. You also get malchus. In other words, you're right. You could say that you can only give him one punishment, not two, so you shouldn't get malchus. That's why Rabbi Akiva says you don't get malchus where you're chayv misas bezdin, but by chayv krisis, also why don't you say the same thing? Because they got a special pasuk. The gomer la'ene mila'enecha pasuk talks about when it talks about chorus, it says the word la'ene, the nichrusu la'ene b'nei amam, and when it talks about malchus, it says v'nikla achicha la'enecha. So we have a Zereshava telling you that when you get krisis, you could also get malchus. Also, you should be able to get Mises best too. You say Kidei V'Shasol tells you only get one punishment, not two. But by course, I got a special pasuk. Here also, you got a special pasuk. Mises best nami nigmar me'ene me'ele'enecha. There it says me'ene nigmar me'ene. It's said by Avodas Kachavim in me'ene and that's the shgaga. Right? He does this thing. There it says also me'ene. So learn up me'enecha. So he says, well, that's not so similar. Done in le'ene me'ele'enecha. You could learn out le'ene, meaning the ene that's talked by Kores, from le'enecha that talks about by Malchus. Le'ene is similar to le'enecha. Ain't done in me'ene mile'enecha. That's too dissimilar. Me'ene from le'enecha, the ene of what? Of Bisus Bezin from le'enecha Malchus. You don't dash that. What's the difference? Hatan Rebbe Shmuel v'Shavakon Ba'Koin. Xavier can be learned in this fashion if it means the same thing, even if the words are slightly different. He says by Tzara says v'Shavakon the covenant will return to Ba'Koin, and we learn that's Xavier Shavak because they have the same meaning. Zui Shiva Zui Bia. So if you don't like me'ene from le'enecha, but me'ene is similar to le'ene. So if you can't learn out Mises Bezin from Malchus to tell you that you get both, so learn out Mises Bezin from le'ene, which is Kores, and Kores in turn is learned out from le'enecha. The gomer le'ene mile'enecha, they're not exactly the same words. If you learn out le'ene from le'enecha, so learn out then me'ene from le'ene. That's also just one letter off, and it's at least as similar as le'ene is to le'enecha. So is similar me'ene to le'ene. So again, Rabbi Akiva says you only get one punishment, not two. But over here he says, so why by chorus do you get it? Because you got a special pasuk. Okay, so you got a special pasuk by Bezin also, and say you get both. So Kivnei Rav Shmuel Rav Yitzchak, Kidei Rishasa, the reason is Kidei Rishasa Mishum Risha Asa Tamachayv Tamachayv Mishtem Shiras Berisha Hamasur LeBezin. This idea that you give them two Bezins, right? In other words, we're going back from we're not this idea of based on the psukim doesn't hold water. So what we really want to say is this: Rabbi Akiva's svara is a Bezin can only give him one punishment for one sin, not two punishments for one sin. So again, the idea is Kidei Rishasa, you only give him one punishment, not two, only if it's Mises Bezin, right? But B'Risha Hamasur LeBezin, we're talking about the punishment. Risha means evil or wicked, but it means here it means the Risha Hamasur LeBezin, the punishment that you mete out for that from giving to Bezin Akasim Medaber. So therefore, there's no kash at all. Because Rabbi Akiva's svara is, listen, Bezin can only give one punishment for two. For one punishment for one sin. God could give you another punishment for that sin. So when it comes to Mises Bezdin, if it's a let's say you did Avodah Zarah or Shvichas Damim or Shabbos or Gilei Arayos, where Bezdin is supposed to punishment, so give him a punishment. Bezdin cannot give you two punishments for the same thing. If they're going to kill him, they can't give him Malchus. But if it's something that there's only one punishment that Beis Din would mete out, like for the case of Chorus, where God's giving him Chorus, you're not giving him Chorus, then you could give him two. So that's one answer for understanding Rabbi Akiva. And we said our Mishnah goes like Rabbi Akiva, because our Mishnah is the one who says that you get Malchus for all these different cases of Chorus, but not for Misas Beis Din. Rabbi Shmuel would say you get Chorus, you get, I said, yeah, you get Malchus, because Rabbi Shmuel would say you get Malchus even for Misas Beis Din. Okay, that's one answer. Rava, we're at the first of the Y lines of the Gemara. Rava Amar, Rava says a different reason. Rava says like this. Everybody agrees, even Rabbi Shmuel would agree, that if they warned him, listen, if you do this sin, if you Machal Shabbos, you're going to get killed. Everybody says you give him Misa, you don't give him Malchus for that. Keep looking at Malchus. The Machlokas is when you only gave him warning for Malchus. Did you tell him you're going to die, or did you tell him we're going to give you Malchus? Keep looking at the Malchus. Rabbi Shmuel Savar Lav Shinit Las Horas Nesas Bez Lokar Lav. Even though the law, this losa say that you were warned, you said don't be machal Shabbos. So listen, it's a lav shit and las horas misas besin, because the Torah you're warning of Malchus, but it's an avera, the punishment for which is misas besin. You'd still get Malchus. That's what he says. For Rabbi Akiva, so for lav shit and las horas misas besin ain't lokan. You don't get Malchus for that. You're supposed to give him a warning for misas besin. A warning for Malchus is meaningless, so you don't get Malchus for that. Obviously, you still have to. You never get Malchus unless you warn him for Malchus. Rabbi Shmuel just says, "Alosa said you warned him. Listen, if you're Machal Shabbos, you're going to get Malchus. Maybe in addition to getting Misas Beis Din, but you're going to get Malchus. You get Malchus." For Rabbi Akiva says, "Lav shin Misas Beis Din ain't lokan love." For Rabbi Akiva, wait a minute. If it's a lav shin Misas Beis Din, you don't get Malchus. Maybe a lav shin increases also. You should not get Malchus. For Rabbi Akiva, Yochi Chai increases nami. Lav shin less horas karsu. It's a lav it says if you do this, you're going to get karas. So maybe you shouldn't get Malchus there too. This is what he said. Chai decreases lav lo tzrich asra. Chai decreases doesn't need a sra. You can't call this, like we said, a lav shenitin las horas misas Beis Din, that you're warned not because you're going to get misas Beis Din. Well, the same thing should be by horas karas. There is no asra when it comes to karas. When it comes to karas, you don't have to give asra. Pesach and Mila, if you're over on Pesach and Mila, which are two mitzvahs I say that you get cars for, honest, you get the punishment of cars. Halpish is here, even though there's no law. So you can't say that chayve creases you get that kares because it's an avera the nitin las horas kares. There is no hasar when it comes to kares because you see you can get kares even with no hasara. But the carbon, maybe the hasara there that you're going to get on the other say 36 cases of kares where you get. The other 60 cases where you have a carbon, maybe that's ours for a carbon. The Pesach Hamila, the less are there's no lav, they don't bring a low micey carbon. But the other ones, they bring a carbon for any other avera that you did. Your chayiv cars for b'mezid, your chayiv shogi, your chayiv a carbon. So maybe the lav is for carbon. So some lav on the time. The reason over there why you don't bring a carbon by Pesach Hamila, if you did a b'shogeg, if you didn't do b'shogeg, is not because there's no lav there. It's like Avodas Kochavim, where it says by Avodas Kochavim, the idea that if you don't do this, Rashi brings down the pasuk, because the pasuk at Rashi in the widest lines, Duksha Kol Tar Kul Inyan Carbon, 4 lines down Avodas Kochavim, Shenemar Pasha Shlach L'Anoshim Eitzel Carbon Avodas Kochavim, it says Torah Chas Yilachem LaOsa B'Shgaga. So they're also compared to Avodas Kochavim, just like Avodas Kochavim is something that you did physically. Doesn't mean that you're over. It means that it tells you don't do this and you did an action, you're chayiv. Then you're chayiv a carbon if you did a b'shogeg. Afkol sheval tasei. Over here, when you didn't bring your carbon pesach or you didn't do mila, you didn't do anything. You just abstained from doing something. There you don't get. That's why you don't bring a carbon. So the lav is not for a carbon. The lav is because it didn't do a mice over there. So the point over here is that why do we say if Rabbi Akiva's reasoning is, as we said, we brought down 2 reasons at the end, right? One reason Rabbi Akiva says you only get Malchus on something that you're chayiv kares for, but not on Misas Beis Din. Why? Because Kedei V'Shaso, you only get punished. Beis Din can only give you 1 punishment, not 2 for the same sin. Can only give you 1 punishment, not 2. But that's Beis Din. But God could give you a punishment for the same sin that you're getting punished for here. What about and another reason is that's one reason. Rava said the reason is because by Mises Bezdin, a lavshin Mises Bezdin, you don't get malchus for. So maybe it's a lavshin in lasaris karis. The answer is we said there is no asar for karis because you see that you got to get karis for being over on Pesach or Mila. If you didn't bring your carbon Pesach on purpose, or you didn't do Mila on purpose, you're going to get karis even though there's no asar. So there's no asar when it comes to creases. So you can't call it. It's not like Mises Bezdin. We could say it's a lav, which is nitin lasaris Mises Bezdin. Therefore, you don't get malchus. This is not a lav shin lasaris karis because there is no asar when it comes to karis. So that's the second reason for Rabbi Akiva. Again, one reason is because only punishment once and not two, and that's only by Mises Bezdin. Another reason is because it's a lavshin in Asaras Mises Bezdin, and Rabbi Akiva is a lavshin in Asaras Bezdin. There's no malchus, but there is no asar when it comes to cars. Therefore, you would get malchus for cars. Ravina Omer, the last few words on the page. Ravina Omer la'olam kanami car, like we said originally. Why do you get malchus when you chayiv kares for something? Why would you, if you were warned about malchus, you get it even though you're going to get kares? Because you don't know, shemasu tshuva best and shamala mochlo, because maybe you won't get the kares, maybe you'll do tshuva. My amrit halo avid tshuva, but fact is you haven't done tshuva yet. Lo psikle milsel kares, it's not definite. You're not definitely going to get kares. You see, when it comes to something like Mises Bezdin, like Avodah Zarah, Gilia Rosh, Shvichas Damim, Shabbos, where you're going to get, if you were warned for that, you were warned not to do that, and there's Adam and there's Asra because you were warned, you're going to get Mises Bezdin. Did tshuva, not to tshuva, you're definitely going to get Mises Bezdin. But by kares, when you're over in some cars, a person slept with his sister, and whatever the reason was, he slept with his sister, chayiv kares for that, but maybe he'll do tshuva. So we don't know for sure that God's going to punish him for that. Therefore, he gets malchus according to Rabbi Akiva. So three reasons why Rabbi Akiva says you get malchus, either because of kedei b'shaso or because of it's a lavshin shenitin lasaros Mises Bezdin, and that's why by Bezdin you don't, but by kares is because there's no asar when it comes to kares. There's no asar for that, or because you may do tshuva, and therefore you may not get kares at all, but malchus you would get. Rabbi Yitzchak said you don't get malchus at all because you only get kares and there's no malchus there at all. Rabbi Yitzchak will talk about tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem, in more detail. Have a good day, everybody.